good day, grown-ups? Or is it really a good day? You're here to go through the first report of the ISWA Marine Littering Task Force project. I don't need to tell you how the problem with plastic waste in our oceans has a long-term damaging effect on our ecosystems, how it has a substantial negative impact upon the tourism and fisheries industries, how it enters the food chain for both animals and humans. Neither do I need to tell you about what a difficult task you have ahead of you to stop plastic waste from entering our oceans, how to stop this major problem at its source. All I can do is to ask you to pay close attention and to do your best with the information you get here today. For our oceans, for our planet, for our future, and for me. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, to kick off our ISWA Marine Litter Showcase, please welcome Kostas Velis, Chair for the Marine Litter Task Force.
Hello, everyone. All right, I'm mic'd, so you can listen to me now. That's fantastic. 2 months late for me here. I'm not used to that, so if I can't look in at the eye, just put the blame on me not being used with the lights. So welcome here. We're so pleased to be launching the Marine Litter Task Force report, the first report that we try to set the scene here in Baltimore, by the sea, where so much is done to protect the environment, and there's activity on the ground to educate people on the big challenge, on the global challenge of marine litter. So what do we say? Keep plastic waste out of our oceans. Now. Well, easy to say. How can we do that? There have been so many efforts over the last 30 years by so many different players, not least the international community, United Nations. But still we're here with an escalating global challenge. And as our President has mentioned, this is something that's taking dimensions of equivalent to the climate change. Not least because small actions here and there, or small decisions or inactions of each and one of us are leading on implications of planetary scale. So the time to act is now, and hence the emphasis of our report on preventing marine litter now. So the report we're launching puts the emphasis on prevention. The scientific community, the policy makers, a lot of NGOs have worked a lot to make us understand where we are standing with this major global challenge. And where we stand is that the case for the damage done by the plastics in the ocean, in the water, and the need to capture the value embedded in the plastics, as we heard in the previous session of the new plastics economy, is very well articulated. It's made. So it's the time to move to action. And how do we move to action from where we are? This is where we want to see what the International Solid Waste Association, there's been one organization that converges and provides an umbrella coverage for the professionals, the scientists, the practitioners, and the organizations around the world, can offer things leading to specific effective solutions. So you're aware of the challenge. I'm not going to show you hundreds of pictures. You know the problem is, but maybe I wanted to show you just a few slightly different pictures. What are these? You see direct dumping into a river. You see dump sites by the coast, by the sea. You see people even swimming, enjoying the water, all the utility that the water in rivers, in the seas delivers to our lives by waste that gets into the water. Why are we here? We're here because we have a complex challenge and a complex system. But we'll try today to cut through this complexity and simplify things, because as we understand, there's so much heard around that sometimes it's very difficult to understand and prioritize what's important, what really matters, how can we move forwards in an effective way. So the first global systemic failure relates to the material properties and our consumption habits. Plastics are amazingly versatile and different. We have 5,000 different types of polymers, actually. And we like them. We like them because they deliver functionality of our lives. So this can't fundamentally change tomorrow. The material properties and the way we interact with them is here. We cannot just say that there's something fundamentally wrong with plastics. If we say that, we don't realize the functionality they deliver and why you're so dependent on them. The second systemic failure has to do with the 2 billion people across this planet without access to proper waste collection. And the 3 billion people, another 1 billion people on the top of the 2 billion that have their waste being collected but not going to a proper place. So going to a dump site or just being fly tipped. We heard before about the difficulties around the new plastics economy and capturing the value that is embedded into our materials. In fact, we have invested heavily over the last 30 years in our affluent Western countries to develop collection infrastructure, but as you see with the challenge of China closing down the market, we still have created push markets. The need for the plastics is not there, despite that the value embedded is not reflected in the economics and the function of the markets. And that's another major systemic failure that makes this material being available to get into the water, because if it was valuable, it wouldn't get in there, or was perceived as valuable. And we have knowledge gaps. What does this mean? For instance, we have very little understanding, if we're looking at the scientific facts, how the plastics degrade, how the plastics break down into smaller pieces, because they do. And that's a major, major issue that we have to realize and put into our agenda and to our solutions. But we're not really sure how does this work. We're not really sure how we can work around the behavioral change that we need to implement to change the way that we interact with the materials and the products. So welcome to our simplified version of marine litter world and its interaction with the solid waste and resources management. And what do we see here? You cannot see everything, but it's a complex problem. However, you see waste not being collected and littered around. You see waste being dumped at places close to seas and rivers. You see rivers where major places polluted themselves and losing functionality, but also major carriers of the plastics towards our seas, towards our oceans. You see urban drainage systems not working because they're really full of plastics. You see even places where recycling in the low-income countries takes place in a way that is polluting the environment with the residues. Of course, you see the waste generated in the seas by touristic activities. And in all these occasions, the solid waste management and resources sector assumes a central role into finding solutions and providing the first major intervention point. I'll go through very rapidly through them. Collection. If you don't have collection in the first place, the material will be littered, will be dumped, will, as we say, fly tipped if it's collected by some rogue operators and they don't have to go or the economics are not okay. So you see so much of it. We see even fly tipping in the UK. We had 1 million cases of fly tipping, reported fly tipping in 2005. You go to the cities, and cities is a major lens to approach what is happening. So our systems really, through our waterways, our rivers, our drainage, our sewers, getting so much material into the water. Well, the biggest thing is in low-income countries, in the global south, in developing countries, you name it as you want. The fact is that we don't have the waste collection infrastructure in place. This is the most important thing, because if these 2 billion people keep generating waste at the pace that we're generating today, and this will increase because of urbanization, what will happen? There is never a single chance to stop marine litter if the waste that all those people are generating is littered. And these people have no option because there's no infrastructure in place or no suitable infrastructure in place. The maritime sector also needs solutions to capture the material on land or handle it en route. And that's the waste management sector can offer solutions as well. But there is another major issue reason why we should be really intervening as upstream as we can, stopping the material from being littered, stopping the material from entering the water. And this is the fact that the plastics, despite that most of them are made as durable, more or less durable, some even more durable than the others, still all break down. They fragment through a series of mechanisms, through photooxidation, microbial activity, physical abrasion, you name it, but they break down. And what happens? One bottle, one bag will end up into millions of tiny particles, which we cannot intercept. We cannot remove them there from the water anymore. So that's a key important reason why we should be stopping them, we should be collecting them in the very first place. So ladies and gentlemen, we try to introduce a new hierarchy about dealing with the marine litter global challenge today. And we say to the world that the waste and resources management sector is here to work as a partner in global alliances and deliver solutions. And what the priorities should be: provide sound collection for all the persons on the planet, stop the fly tipping and littering, and close dam sites, especially those who are very close to water bodies. These are our 3 top most important priorities if we want to prevent marine litter, intervene, and reverse the flow now. Of course, it's not the only thing that is needed. Of course, we need to capture the value present in the materials through recycling, through thermal depolymerization, going back to monomers. Of course, we have to redesign the entire plastics economy, as the new plastics economy initiative suggests, towards a genuine clean material cycle circular economy. But none of those things will be able to deliver solutions within the timescale suggested by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for life at seas. And we've borrowed here the excellent work from Dr. Jambek and her colleagues, and we have a plan against her curve predicting how much waste is going to be available to potentially leak. And what we're saying that is for immediate results, really you have to focus on the 3 things we've been describing. And what are those 3 things? Provide safe collection for all the people on this planet, stop the fly tipping and littering, close the dump sites who are close to rivers, close to the seas, work with the maritime sector as a 4th priority to provide capture of the waste on the land. The Solid Waste Management Association has historically worked on a series of landmark projects over the last few years. And the very major of those was working with the United Nations Environment Programme, with UNEP, to co-develop the very first Global Waste Management Outlook. An outlook which summarizes how the planet manages the waste and how it recovers resources out of it. And as we said before, the major finding, the one thing that we should be keeping is that there's 2 billion people without primary waste collection. What we have done also through this work is start associating the Sustainable Development Goals recently established with activities of our sector. And as I showed you before, there is a series of different targets on reducing poverty, on sustainable cities and communities, on responsible consumption and production that all relate and actually are prerequisites to address and meet the target for reduction of marine litter. So if we don't do those, there is no chance that we're going to meet a 2025 target for the marine litter. So what the sector can offer, and we detail this in the report. The sector comes here to the international community with solutions based on technologies and understanding those technologies based on scientific knowledge and engineering knowledge, applied knowledge, and also bringing the experts, the actual people who have the ability to design, implement, operate the systems on the ground to capture the waste and stop marine litter from happening. So what we're proposing and coming to you for the sector internally, but also all the other stakeholders, is a partnership. And in this partnership, we do invite you to endorse the Marine Litter Task Force vision, to join the advisory board, to support our dissemination efforts and be a means to great impact, but also invite ISWA to your existing initiatives and co-create solutions at the local level with us. What we'll do for you, we'll explain it in the report, which hopefully will be available from the website before you wake up tomorrow, trying to balance time zones between US and Europe, global launch for the press. And you can get the report and every other information around our initiative from the website, and I hope that you will be able to actively interact with it. So over the next year, we will be intensifying our efforts as International Solid Waste Association through the Marine Litter Task Force and the partnership to communicate best practices, to identify hotspots for priority interventions. We'll be joining other major international efforts, and we'll be assessing the level of investment needed, and eventually we'll try to develop a facilitation and information platform so that all these best practices and useful information can be implemented in practice. The other thing is going to be doing is that we will be around the world. We have first mentioned about the task force a few months back here in the US, in the United Nations Ocean Conference 3 months ago in New York. And now, through a series of events, for instance, we're going to be later in November in the German Development Bank, KfW, will be moderating a session there in Frankfurt about the solutions that are needed around marine litter. Of course, stay with us for the entire years and the years to come, but 1 year from now, we're going to be in Kuala Lumpur and we're going to be sharing there tangible results of an entire year of efforts of the task force and the partnership we're launching here today. Now, it would have been totally impossible to hear and talk to you without the day and night work of the team, and I would like to openly acknowledge them. And we have here, maybe you can raise that your delegates can see you, is Ms. Gunilla Carlson, Communication Coordinator at CISAV and Chair of the ISWA Communication Group. Mr. Håkan Rylander, former CEO of CISAV, who has really transformed his company and his region waste management over 40 years of service. Ms. Maria Chacona, international consultant. Mr. David Lerpiniere, international consultant and principal consultant at Resources Future, at the General Secretariat of ISWA, Miss Aditi Ramola, and Jennifer McDonald. We have only Jennifer here. So I would like to thank you, and join me, please, applauding them for all the hard efforts on that. But also we wouldn't have been here without the kind support of our sponsors. And of course, ISWA is putting all the resources in the first place, but we cannot do this alone. So we're really, really grateful to the kind financial contribution and major contribution, the partnership with the Swedish Waste Management Association, and I'm going to mispronounce that now, sorry for my good Swedish friends, but it's Avfallsverket, something like that, close. All right, and then the financial support also from CSEV and from the Danish Waste Management Association, DECOFA, and the all-in-kind contribution at other institutions put there, not as money, but as time and effort. So thank you very much. And those who haven't been part of this already, we have many, many more those who joined and will be appearing soon on the website and next efforts. But spread the word and join our efforts. You're very, very welcome in every capacity that you can and are willing to contribute. So the waste management and resources sector, ladies and gentlemen, is here today. By launching this new report and setting the scene, we try to prioritize. We try to rethink around this complex global challenge, around the systemic failures, but also around tangible solutions in the short term, in the near future, with going to be major gains, major wins, and will enable us to meet the 2025 target, Sustainable Development Target, for substantially reducing the amount of marine litter, especially from land-based sources. We're here, that's the time, join us. And just to test how much well you've been attending, we're going to ask you a few questions now. That's the academic in me waking up. So let's try, join us with Slido. Sorry.
My name is Brian Steer. I run the Marine Debris Prevention and Management Initiative for Tetra Tech. And I would like to suggest on one of your slides, you talk about closing dump sites and talk about especially near the water or the sea. But you don't say anything else. However, in your brochure, you do. And I would like to suggest that we add a little thing on the end of that that says that we promote sanitary landfills and or appropriate waste treatment and disposal.
And absolutely spot on that, and I will repeat. Of course, if you close the dump sites, the material will not disappear, so we need to build the right infrastructure, and somewhere sanitary landfills is the first place to look at suitable infrastructure. So yes, thank you for the addition. It's a no-brainer, and definitely that is how we are approaching it and what we are suggesting. But if you have any questions now, let's go through the questions, and then we can receive questions through the Slido. So if you could connect, and let's go and see how you perceive what you have introduced here today. Thank you. All right, there you go. So, you see it? I don't need to read it, really. What do you think? All right, it keeps changing. That's good. Wow. All right, so I think it's stabilized now, more or less. So I think there is an overwhelming support from the audience today that waste and resources sector should play a central role in stopping marine litter. Most of us strongly agree, and the rest who were willing to respond agree. I hope that's not the effect that is politically incorrect to say that you disagree. But I hope this reflects the determination of all people in this room to do something about it. Let's see the next one. It's a bit more complex, so I'll leave you a bit more time for reading. But we introduce today a hierarchy of options, what we should prioritize when dealing with marine litter and the contribution of the waste and resources sector. What's your opinion, actually? We put something on the table, but what you think is most important? It keeps changing. So interestingly enough, what we propose as our key action for the sector seems to be steadily on the top. But then, an action that we didn't prioritize as an immediate action, well, as an action of bringing immediate effects, is second, enhance and capture the value of used plastic, which is absolutely, of course, necessary, but as you may have heard in the previous session of the new plastics economy, has also major challenges to be overcome with the current status quo. So people are split, not equally, but not so dissimilarly between the three things, and the third most important is build sound waste disposal infrastructure for all. And the others don't receive so much support. And then let's move on then to our last statement. Solid waste management related targets and marine litter related targets as part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Did you know that they were connected somehow? Yes? No? No idea? Okay, so I think this answer is the answer I was hoping for, which means that we're introducing some new things on the table, and also we're helping understand how important is the work our sector is doing for other sectors and other activities and other targets of the society. So I think for me this is a take-home message, and hopefully it's a take-home message for all of us. Go and spread the word through the task force, through your own initiatives. Our sector can make a significant contribution to the other sustainable development targets, and there is a clear interconnection there. And that's why we have to make very clear what this contribution is. Right, so I think I've spoken a lot, and it's time for you now to ask questions to me or to the task force, and I'll try to answer on their behalf, but let's go ahead. First question, it's interesting, and says, shouldn't we look at rivers as a way of preventing marine litter? I'm not sure how rivers prevent marine litter. Rivers suffer from marine litter, and rivers are a major transport medium of marine litter. Clearly, the task force will be looking to approach the problem through different systemic lenses, if you like, and looking what happens through river, how the material enters in the rivers, and how it's transported in the rivers, and what is its fate when it has entered the rivers is of key importance. So definitely, rivers are of fundamental importance for marine litter, locally and globally. Another question is, can there be any results without a global convention? Well, okay. That's not an easy one. Global convention. We've seen the global conventions for climate change. As I've told you, I'm not the right person to fully answer that. But as you know, the United Nations, different parts of it, and different other organizations, but especially the United Nations, have been trying for well over 30 years now to coordinate activities. The Ocean Conference 3 months ago organized at the United Nations headquarters in New York was part of these efforts to introduce international collaboration, but convention, yes, there have been a lot of efforts of high-level meetings so far, but I think there is an opportunity for the sector to be better represented in those meetings. Okay, flooded here with questions. So, how do you start a collection program in developing countries? And am I supposed to be an expert on all these? I don't know. I'll put my academic hat on, working a lot with developing countries. And I would say you start simple, you start low cost, and you start with building on the will of people to have a clean and safe environment. Because everybody wants to live in a clean and safe environment, so often people organize themselves. And then you need some external support as well to make it happen, to build the capacity and build the infrastructure. The question comes from the other side of the spectrum of what the things we've been focusing today. What to do with the waste already in the oceans? Is a good question. What to do with the waste already in the oceans? Can we remove it or not? We know that a lot of efforts, specific efforts, have received a lot of attention lately and a lot of funding. So they will be tested, or are tested now at some level. But as I've told you, when the material is already in there and keeps breaking down and becoming smaller and smaller, it's very difficult to intervene. I've been hearing also in an excellent session yesterday, organized by the United Nations, evidence around how difficult it is to recover value from the plastics when they are already in the water, because how they emerge more polluted, they have more materials attached to them, so practically you don't have the weight of plastics, you have the weight of contamination, and you have the problem of absorption and adsorption, persistent organic pollutants. So it's a not easy case. To me, we should be really focusing upstream on prevention. Are short-term emergency strategies being developed for the cities with the highest leakage rates? In Indonesia, for example? I think maybe other colleagues who have been working more in Indonesia will be able to answer this. But yes, I think Dr. Jambek's work, who is going to be presenting very soon, was instrumental to set the priorities for where the major leakages are, And what we know, there is a very, very strong commitment from the Indonesian government. And as we speak now, there are so many initiatives in that part of the world. This could serve as pilots, of course, for other parts of the world. That said, we have to acknowledge the different socioeconomic realities around the planet and the different cultural realities, which affect a lot how the waste leaks and gets into the water, and how you can implement solutions and what solutions can implement and types of technologies. So yes, strategies, cities are a key focus, but we need to customize it locally. And I do apologize, I'm really bombarded with questions, so I'm just cherry-picking randomly, really, rather than assessing their importance. But you're asking, you mentioned it is important to address this problem upstream, yet your first priority is about collection. Why are we not including reduction of single-use item? Yes. So there is no contradiction between those two. What we have shown you is that different types of interventions will bear results, will bring us results at different time scales. So reduction of single-use item talks about the waste prevention and minimization agenda, which also emerges, especially in Europe and hopefully in the US as well. We're going to have targets in general for that. Rationalization of single-use packaging items is definitely on the agenda, but will it deliver the massive reduction we want within the next few years? My take on that is that no, while collection will do, yes. So we need many years to work on controlling and rationalizing the use of single-use items, but solutions about waste collection and proper infrastructure and safe disposal are here at our hands, and we can implement them, and we can stop the leakage, the bulk of the leakage through that in the first place. What is my opinion on banning certain plastics? Okay, I'm going to take a tough question now. E.g., for example, plastic bag bans, all right, now you can see it in countries like Rwanda and smaller jurisdictions like Washington, D.C. All right, that's a tricky question. I think every initiative that helps prevent the material to get in the water is useful, but also has to be assessed on its ability to deliver and on its ability to change realities on the ground and people perceptions. In that sense, such initiatives are important, but we have to be aware that might not be on their own, alone, sufficient to change the problem and address the problem in its magnitude and spread all over the planet. So in that sense, I think such initiatives have a symbolic role, are highly debatable, but shouldn't prevent us from seeing the fact that if we don't have collection, material will keep leaking. All right. How to join the team, someone is asking. That's fantastic. So there are many levels of involvement, formal and informal. So you can join through your organizations, and we're looking for major partners. We're looking also for small financial support that will enable to deliver the impact we're hoping to be delivering throughout the next few years. But also, if you're experts on the topic, you can share your expertise and join our advisory board. You can email each of the team members, and you will have specific information around that on the website. You're very, very welcome to support these efforts and become part of the solution. What are the task force efforts in removing plastics already in oceans and waterways? This is out of the scope and is not the focus of the task force. I think there are other major organizations already there who have made the case for that. They've done fantastic work. We are collaborating with organizations that do those things, but definitely what we bring here on the table is a different perspective. That clearly, removing the material that's in there is not the top priority, is not a sustainable solution, because if we let more material keep getting into there, where this is going to get us. 10 to 15 global brands produce most of the marine litter. How to make them act and pay? Okay, so this is about responsibility and sharing responsibility. I think, again, it's not just a matter of paying, but it's a matter of assuming collectively responsibility for what happens. So I cannot really answer on behalf of the companies, small or bigger, which are putting the plastics out there. I don't think this is a fundamentally bad thing. The companies are delivering some functionality. People are consuming the products for some reason. So I think the work that's done by the new plastics economy is exemplar in a sense that it enables the different stakeholders to sit together and develop the level of understanding and joint solutions. So it's not just a matter for making someone pay. It's a bit more complex than that. It's assuming joint responsibility and developing solutions on the ground. What percentage of marine plastic litter comes from stormwater pollution from developed nations? I don't know. Maybe some other people know, but this is part of the research gaps I've been referring to. We have found out recently that a lot of the microplastics from clothes, from fibers, they would end up in the wastewater treatment plants, and maybe they're not effectively intercepted. If they were effectively intercepted there, they could, for example, end up into the sludges, into the by-waste, and then get back into our jurisdiction, to the solid waste management, and we would have also again the responsibility to manage it. Actually, we're managing some of it already through that route. But knowing exactly the material flows and the balances is something that we have just scratched on the surface. The work of Dr. Jampek was instrumental into starting such type of studies. I'm also working on that sort of things on my academic life, if you like. But to me, answering these questions is fundamental to enable us prioritize better. Over 100 jurisdictions in California have banned polystyrene food service wares. Do you have an opinion if this can make a difference in marine litter? Well, it can make a difference if the material was getting into the water in the first place. Here, was it getting here in the first place? What percentage of it was getting in there? I don't know. So, to me, all these initiatives are good, are raising awareness, but we have also to mobilize the knowledge that gives us what part of the solution is this contributing. So maybe it's an important contribution here, but if you go to a low-income country where you don't have waste collection whatsoever, there the contribution of such a move would be a tiny, small amount in comparison to the major flows that they go into the water. I'll close with the last question because we have our excellent next speakers, keynote speakers to join. So, is it priority being placed on producer responsibility for plastic waste and development of alternative materials? The producer responsibility is a way of capturing the value embedded in plastics. Other parts of the world are doing better, other less well so. In Europe, within the European Circular Economy Package, there is also a call for for harmonization of extended producer responsibility efforts. However, we're not really sure how these systems, how effective are those systems, but at this time, it's one of the best systems. There is no agreement across the sector which is the best system. You have extended producer responsibility, individual producer responsibility, product stewardship, deposit schemes, return banks, and so on. I think we need a mixture. I think we take our chances and test all those to be able to find what works best. Thank you very much, and we'll be here throughout the Congress to answer your solutions. Join our efforts for oceans and seas without plastic waste. Thank you.
There must have been something in the water.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Chad Pregrake.
Well, I heard what he said and I went on my way. Didn't think about it for a couple of days. Then it hit me like lightning.
All right. How we doing? Let's clap it out, folks. Let's clap it out. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I honestly, I work on cleaning up the Mississippi River, removing, all the garbage that you just talked about. And I just got to say, I feel really important right now because I'm part of this. I got to say, there's a lot of intelligent people doing great stuff for the world, and I'm glad to be doing a small bit of it and glad to be part of this. And it truly is a huge honor to be here. And I know it takes a lot of work to put this conference on. There's so many different sessions and different speakers going on, and it takes a lot of work. So let's give it up for everybody who put this conference on, folks. Let's give it up. While we're at it, let's just clap for no reason at all. It's fun to clap. Let's be excited. Pumped up, loving it. But again, my name is Chad Pregrake, and I've been asked to come here and tell you the mission I've been on, similar to a lot of yours, and that's helping to clean up America's rivers. And I've been doing it as of June 20 years. And when I say cleaning up America's rivers, you saw it. I'm not talking just picking up the plastic, small items. I'm talking about removing thousands upon thousands of disregarded 55-gallon barrels, thousands of tires, thousands of appliances, pulling out the cars, trucks, tops of school buses, cutting up sunken barges, boats, big stuff. And been asked to tell you about my backstory and how I got into cleaning up, helping to clean up America's rivers. And one river, one piece of garbage. And so it's kind of flip to that slide there. So my backstory is I grew up right on the Mississippi River. And when I say right on the Mississippi River, I mean my parents' house is from here to that screen away from the river's edge. I spent all my time on the Mississippi River, fishing, playing, swimming. I lived out in the country. I was like a country river kid. And when I was 15 years old, I got into commercial shell diving with my brother, or we called it clamming. And that's essentially a pretty sketchy operation, I must say. It's diving for mussel shells, okay? And I was selling the shells after I'd grab them, and that's how I was saving money to go to college, and once I was in college, to stay in college. Now, clamming, okay, like I said, sketchy operation. You essentially have a go-kart engine running an oilless compressor that pumps air through a garden hose down to you, okay? You're the anchor for the boat. You're diving on the Mississippi River, right? We weren't using depth finders at the time, so you didn't know if it was, say, 6 foot deep or 28 foot deep. You just go out there, put the regulator in your mouth, put your lead weight belt on. You got anywhere from 80 to 100 pounds of lead around your waist. You got a basket around your neck. You'd go, you'd fire that compressor up, you'd jump in the water, and you'd climb down that hose, okay? And again, you don't know how deep it is, so it's really scary, actually, and the most dangerous part. So by the time you reach the bottom, well, after 2 feet, you couldn't see anything. The water is so turbid that you couldn't see, so it's like being in a cave by 6 feet. So you're climbing down that hose, and you hit the bottom, okay? And then you're getting ripped across the bottom. I mean, the Mississippi has heavy current on it, and you got to slow down a 2,500-pound boat, because again, you're the anchor. So you basically get down there and you're getting ripped across the bottom. You're struggling to slow that boat down, slow it down, trying to dig in, and then you slow it down, and then you keep your face right down to the mud, and then you feel for mussel shells. okay? And you grab a mussel shell, and then you grab it and you put it in that basket till you get another 100 pounds around your waist or around your neck, right? And then you're basically crawling upstream all day long for 8 to 10 hours a day, okay? And I did that for 6 summer seasons, and it was a great experience when it comes to river. One, I could feel a lot of garbage down there, okay? Toilets, cars, everything, you name it. But also, what was pretty cool about it is you couldn't see anything being down there all day, but you could hear, right? And well, you could hear really well. Even in 30 foot of water, you could hear a radio in the boat. And what you could also hear down there is tens of thousands of fish communicating, right? Like drums sound like click, 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 click. There's thousands of them. Catfish, especially when they're schooled up, they sound like bullfrogs. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Thousands of them. And I became to know the river like, this thing is alive. This is a living life force, you know? And you'd never know because it's so dirty and turbid that you can't see anything. But this truly is a living life force, right? So great experience to do that. I did that for 6 summer seasons with my brother, commercial shell diving. And over that 6 summer seasons, I basically crawled about a 150-mile stretch of the Mississippi River on the bottom. And I got to know the river pretty much from the bottom up, okay? And did that, like I said, 6 summer seasons. Then I made a great decision to drop out of college and be a commercial fisherman on the river. That was awesome. My parents were super pumped on that. They were like, great decision. Yes, not really, because they're both teachers. So I only lasted 4 days doing that. Went back to college real quick, so that's good news. And then I worked on towboats, on barges, going up and down the Mississippi River, running sand on it. And all those different experiences, I saw a different side of the river that a lot of you people know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll show you a couple. That's like 12 foot of water in a back channel of the Mississippi River, okay? Here's another shot. Another shot. So, some places on the Mississippi River, when you look at Google Earth on there, I thought in a couple places it had just snowed when they took the picture, but it wasn't snow, it was garbage, okay? That picture's from Memphis, Tennessee, right? So I'm out there shell diving, I start to see all these different spots that are just totally trashed, and here's the deal. The Mississippi River. There isn't a person at this conference that hasn't heard of the Mississippi River, or the world for that matter. Everybody has heard of the Mississippi River. And I'm not the smartest 17-year-old at the time. I was just a teenager when I got the idea, like, I'm going to clean this up. But I'm not the smartest person by any means, but I'm looking at that saying, this is not right, you know? And then I knew that all these cities and towns along the riverbank get their drinking waters. 18 million people get their daily drinking water directly out of the Mississippi River. The town where I grew up gets their daily drinking water out of it. I'm thinking, this is not right, okay? I want to do something about this. So I started calling around asking if anybody's doing anything about it. Nobody is doing anything, not to the extent that I want to do something. And I called the state of Illinois. Okay, where I'm from, Illinois. I started calling the state, and they basically said, who are you, kid? What garbage are you talking about? No, we don't have any money for such a project, right? And I got to listen to those guys. I'm thinking, these people live 3 hours from the river. I'm calling at the state capitol. They have no idea the extent of the problem, you know? And I just need to show them. So over 4 summer seasons while shell diving, I started taking pictures of everything that I saw out there, right? Barrel piles, you name it, everything. I put about 70 pictures together, and my intention was to go back to the state, okay? And here's the deal. When I say I called the state, I called them for 4 years. I called the governor of Illinois so many times. Like, I called and called and called his people. He never called me back, but he's in jail now, so maybe that's a good thing that he didn't call me back. Just sort of distance yourself, you know. But we actually have 2 in my state. I don't know if they're cellmates, but way to go, Illinois. But anyway, he never called me back, but I was listening to what they were saying and why they were saying it. They had no idea, right? So all those pictures, I've got them all. I'm just getting ready to go back to the state. And it's the craziest thing how this whole river cleanup operation started and organization started. And it started from one thing. It started from a car race, NASCAR, right? Or Formula One, whatever. I saw a NASCAR race when I was going to college. I'm walking through the living room thinking a lot about this. How can I get this going? I've had, over 4 years, I've had so many people tell me no, they're not interested or whatever. I'm walking through the living room thinking a lot about it. I see a driver, okay, a race car. How many people have seen an end of a race car? Anyone? Bueller? Anyone? Yep. Okay, so here's the deal. At the end of the race, here's what happens if you haven't seen a race car, the end of a race. person wins, they get out of their car and they got all these sponsor patches on, right? They put a sponsor hat on. They start talking about their sponsor. I'm thinking a lot about this. I see a guy do exactly that, and I'm thinking, a sponsor. I can wear patches. You know, if a company will sponsor a race car, they'll sponsor a river cleanup. Be good for the river, it's good for the country, it's good for the community. It's a positive deal, and it needs to be done, right? So where I'm from, the three main employers there was Alcoa, okay? And then John Deere, it's world headquarters of John Deere, where I'm from, small town. And they made Case IH tractors there as well. Three main employers. Alcoa starts with an A. Boom, I'll start there. And so that's what I did. I looked them up in the phone book. Okay, there's 50 different departments. Thousands of people work at this place. I just picked some random number, got some random lady on the phone, said, hey, my name's Chad McGracky. I want to clean a 435-mile stretch of the Mississippi River. I was wondering who runs the show, who's in charge there, him or her, whoever it is. I want to talk to him or her, right? The lady on the phone is not feeling it. She's not going to put me through to the top person, okay? She's scared. She's like, no, you know, I can't, you know. Anyway, after begging her for 10 minutes, right? Begging her, like, hey, please put me through. She's like, fine, I'll put you through to Mr. Wilkinson, top person. And just before she puts me through, she's like, but don't tell him who put you through, okay? Anyway, it's beginner's luck. His assistant wasn't there that day. He answered the phone, and I basically just started, hey, this is what I want to do. I live 5 miles from you. I want to clean a 435-mile stretch. I'm really excited about this. First person I talked to saw the NASCAR race, the whole bit. He's not feeling it. He doesn't want anything to do with me. He's annoyed. How'd you get my number? All that kind of stuff. He's busy with expansions and all this. And I'm like, listen, man, I'm going to stalk you and wait by your car. I'm coming over there. I live 5 minutes from you. Anyway, true story. But so he's like, annoyed, but he says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes on Thursday. I'm like, great, that's all I need. So that's exactly what I did. I got my first meeting. I showed him all these pictures of this. This is over here, that's over there, that's over there, that's my dog, that's my boat, you know, flipping through all this stuff. And he's like, this is unbelievable. He can't believe it. I'm like, it's not unbelievable. It's just unacceptable. And nobody's ever done anything about it. It's the Mississippi River. And I want to do something and about it. And he's like, well, he asked me to bring a budget in. And just so you guys know, I set out with big intentions, right? I figured set your sights high, let nothing be a failure. As long as you work as hard as you can every day, that's all you can do. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go big with it because it needs to be done. I wanted 6 people to help me. I wanted 2 work boats. I want to start in St. Louis, Missouri, right under the St. Louis Arch. This is the gateway of the West. It's going to be symbolic, going to be great. And I wanted to work basically 1,000 miles of shoreline if you included all the islands and the shoreline, right? So I went in there, had a budget, and he asked me to bring that. I slid the budget over to Mr. Wilkinson, okay? He sits back in this big chair because he's interested in this. He's like, wow, $77,000. I'm like, you asked for it. That's what budgets do. They add up, and my mom helped me, and this is what it is. And there was 0 money in it for me. Just so you know, Zippo 0, okay? But I had to pay the other 6 people. Gas, oil, insurance, disposal costs was my biggest expense, right? It's going to be the largest cleanup ever. He looks at it, he's like, I can't do 77, but how about 10? I'm like, 10? He's like, yeah, 10,000. I'm like, 10 G's, 10 minutes, you got a deal, super pumped. And he's annoyed. He's like, sit down, settle down, sit down. So I sit down. He's like, one condition, you go back out and raise the rest of the money you need. No problem, be back on Monday. Thought it was easy. Well, wasn't exactly easy. 6 weeks went by. I called Nike. I called everybody there was to call. I didn't care who they were, what they did. I was calling and calling. Same thing. Who are you, kid? No response. But here's the deal. Looking back, I don't blame any state agency, government agency. I don't blame any company. Because at the time, I'm 22 years old, never proved myself, never done the largest cleanup in the history of the Mississippi River, any of that. But what I did have going for me was, it is the Mississippi River. It does look like that. We do drink the water. And it's a simple deal as far as like it's a problem. I can physically do something about it. So I crawled back into Mr. Wilkinson's office. I said, hey, will you still help me out? He said, well, tell you what, yes, I will. You just write me up a budget for just you with your boat, because I had a shell diving boat I could use as a floating dumpster, right? Just you going out there working alone in the hometown, just write me a budget for that. I'm like, great, This is like 4 years of rejection here. I finally got my break. So I write him a budget, $8,400, and I started the next day cleaning up the Mississippi River. Okay, I wasn't 501c3 tax deductible, not-for-profit organization. I didn't even know what that was, but I started. He told me to open a bank account. I did, and I started the next day. Okay, super pumped. And here's the deal: the day I started was the best day I possibly could have started cleaning up the river, because the day I started was the day my parents went out of town for 2 weeks. Okay, we live right on the river. We have our own boat launch. They have a yard. I need a staging area for all the barrels, diesel drums, I mean, you name it, toilets, everything. They were gone for 2 weeks, and when they got home, 2 weeks later, a massive pile as big as the house. They are not pumped at all. They're super mad, but here's what happens in that first 2 weeks, and it created a wave for this mission of cleaning up rivers that I had no idea how impactful this would be. But people just like yourselves, random people out there seeing me doing, what I'm doing. They asked me what I'm doing. I told them what it was. They thought it was great. They called the media in my town. Well, the media basically then came out and did a story after my parents told me I got to call the media back. I did. It was the first time I listened to my parents in 22 years, but I called them back. I did a story. I didn't like the story. Okay, I thought it was sensationalized, cheesy. It was awful. Okay, had me front page, Sunday, full page, said, love affair with the river, had me driving a boat with no shirt on. It was super embarrassing. I hated it, okay? I was like, oh no, my friends are calling me. It was a bad deal. Anyway, I didn't like it, okay? But the rest of the country liked it. And what I mean by that is they sent that article out on the AP, and the next day, Peter Jennings picked it up at ABC Worldwide News out of New York, and Anderson Cooper worked for him. Anderson Cooper's flying in for 3 days to hang out. They got another crew coming from Denver. CNN's flying in from Atlanta. Fox News is coming in from Chicago, and I'm kind of like, okay, I'll pick you up at the airport, go out, pick some garbage up. I didn't think it was late breaking news, but that's what I did. And anyway, really helped. Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. Totally got excited talking, and I forgot I had a PowerPoint, so now I got to rip through some pictures to get to the video that I want to play. So here we go. Just being honest. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I'm very excited to be here. Just throwing it out there. Here we go. Boom. Bam. Another shot. That's me, Davenport. Bam. Repping. Boom. It's me as a kid. Bam. That's what the bottom of the river looks like. Right there, folks. That's my best joke. Just throwing it in there. That's what my wife said. Anyway, here we go. That actually is where I spent a lot of time commercial shell diving. I took that in a drought, so all the water ripping across those logs creates a lot of oxygen. Fish like a lot of oxygen. Mussel shells like a lot of oxygen. And so that's where I spent my time, 8 to 10 hours a day, feeling for those mussel shells at normal river levels. That's my senior picture. That was a good one. God, I love that one. That's my brother, still full-time commercial fisherman. Goes the saying, like, we eat the fish that come out of our rivers. It's important to keep it clean. And another shot. That's my first boatload. Super pumped. Now what I want to do is play a quick video. And, when it boils down to clean up rivers or whatever you're doing, whatever facet you're into, it honestly just takes a lot of hard work to make change. And what I like about this video is it captures the hard work it takes, the physical hard work. So here we go. It just takes a couple minutes.
I'm 22 years old. My name's Chad Pagracki, and I'm from East Moline, Illinois. I grew up right on the Mississippi River. I mean, my house is, like 10 feet from the river, and I spent most of my time on the water. I have been compared to a modern-day Huck Finn by some, but I don't know whether that's true or not. Because I was living on the islands for the last 6 years as a commercial mussel diver, I saw trash and I was tired of living around trash, camping out. All the beaches were totally trash and nobody was coming out to pick them up. So I thought, well, if I don't do it, who's going to? And this is the Mississippi, the largest river in the nation. In my opinion, the most valuable resource our nation has to offer. And yet it's been so neglected in the past and so trashed. And I think that it's time to be picked up. What I find out here is basically like a lot of barrels, tires, bottles, cans, mattresses, for refrigerators, TV sets, everything you can imagine that'd be in a city dump, you find out here. Oh, here we go. But you know what? It's not going to miraculously go into a dump down river or something, you know, end up in a landfill. It's just going to go farther down the river. It's going to be in the river no matter if a flood took it here or what. And if it doesn't end up in the river, it'll end up in the Gulf. So, yeah, you gotta love this little spot here. 25 years ago, it was bad. You just dumped everything in the river. That's just what people did, you know. 50 years ago, didn't matter. Oh, look at this. Are they full? No, unfortunately. Oh, no, I don't drink it. I usually just dump them out or leave them like they were. Oh, perfect. Second one I found like this year. Look at that. Boy, there's like a whole bunch of eggs here. It's pretty weird. We're right below the Quad Cities, and yeah! There's a barrel pile, probably like 50, 60 years old, and there's probably like 30 barrels here. It doesn't take me long to fill the boat, really. Pretty heavy barrel. What? Oh, man. So I had to figure out a way to get the money to get paid because I can't come out here and spend my own money and use my own boat and rig. You know, it costs a lot. I've been able to do it because of Alcoa. They gave me an $8,400 grant to come out here, and that paid for all my gas, my food, my expenses, whether it be props, fixing my motor. I blew one motor up already, and if it wasn't for Alcoa, I wouldn't be right here, and the shores would still be just as dirty as when I started. And I've picked over probably estimated 30,000 pounds of trash, 92 barrels, 156 tires, so the shores would just be the same as they were. The city of Rock Island let me put these dumpsters here, and then I can make 2-3 boatloads a day if I want. Look at that. Some of it's recycled, like all the aluminum is, all the barrels I've taken in, all the tires are recycled. Yeah, one man gathers where another man spills. That's what it is. Yeah, I guess I'm the gatherer.
So that gives you a better idea. Thank you. Thank you. So I really like that video because it does capture an amount of hard work. And that year, you know, my original goal was to clean that 435-mile stretch, but I could only just do it myself that year. But I kind of proved myself. If it took me just cleaning up the river alone, I'm going to do it, whatever it takes. But that year, CNN, all the other attention, and I removed about 90,000 pounds of garbage just around the hometown. That really helped me establish some credibility. And so I raised about a third of the money that I needed. I got the crew of 6 people, the original goal, crew of 6 people. I got another workboat made. We went down to St. Louis, Missouri. And St. Louis is key here in the States because essentially key geographically when it comes to rivers because you have the Missouri River, the Mississippi, and the Illinois all meet there, right? I picked springtime to start out, okay? Not the smartest move, but got down there, and it was the most treacherous thing you'd ever seen in your life. We were scared to death, and I'm the only person with any river experience. The other 6 people I had talked into doing this with me had 0 river experience, so they're scared, whatever. We started out, we moved and worked for about 6 weeks in tents, and then I got my brother to let me use his houseboat. That was awesome till it sank. That's a lot of fun. You should try that. It's really empowering for like a Wednesday. Just put everything you got and just let her go. It's gone. Anyway, I try to be positive about stuff and, try to just think positive. And the only good thing I can think of looking back was it sank in deep water. So we just kind of moved back to tents, went back upriver. So anyway, folks, that was my leave no trace joke. We didn't do that, but it did start sinking. It was awful. It was a bad experience. Pulled it out of the water. We finished that year, little 20-foot camper. And here's the deal. Did we get everything out of the Mississippi River? No. We did what we could with what we had, and we worked as hard as we can every day, and that's all you can do. And that's what each and every one of us did that year, right? And here's what I learned. Still helps me to this day. Thanks, dude. Should have been front row. That would have been amazing. We could have, yes. No, but here's the deal. Here's what I learned. Most important thing I'm glad I learned it when I did, is cleaning up rivers is not going to be easy in any regards. From an operational standpoint, from dealing with a crew of people, from trying to fundraise, the logistics of getting rid of hazardous waste and all this stuff you're pulling in, it's not going to be easy. Then I got to thinking, you know what? If it was so easy, it would have been cleaned up a long time ago. Somebody else would have done it. And so once I got that mindset, like, bring it on, there's going to be problems. Yeah, I've just got to deal with them, and I got to keep going. I got to try to do the most I can with what I have. So, finished that year, a little 20-foot camper. Went up the Illinois River. Now, here's where it gets good, okay? Went up the Illinois River. Got all the way. The Illinois River is formed by a few things coming in together in Chicago, south side of Chicago, right? The head of the river. We worked all the way up there, and the last 7 miles we worked was the most disgusting place you could ever imagine, okay? I would have pictures for you, but they sank in a houseboat that sank, another one, never mind. But anyway, I'd have pictures, but here's what the shoreline looked like. And some of you guys that work in different nations around the world have seen similar sites. But this particular site was the most degrading site I could ever, just overwhelming. It was nothing but barrels, 55-gallon barrels, mixed with tires, so much plastics, and then tens of thousands of used condoms, okay? It was essentially just an open sewer is what formed the river from the south side of Chicago. You talk about just demoralized, just like, this is unbelievable. I had worked the whole year. Everybody had quit except myself and one other guy, and I'm going to quit. I'm done with this whole deal. Like, I'm living in an open sewer. Nobody's even seeing this. I mean, am I making a difference? That's the real deal. Then I realized, yeah, I am making a difference. And it is small in the scheme of things, but I'm making a difference, and it's tangible. I can see it, I can do it, I can do something about it. And then I got to thinking about, you know what? That's what this is about. It's about making change, it's about making a difference. And if I'm going to continue doing this, I need to do the operational side a lot better than what I'm doing. Okay? Because half the time we're not out, we're picking up garbage. The other half the time we're trying to get rid of all this stuff in a proper manner, right? And by the way, just to go to what you were saying, wherever there was a county that, as I went up these rivers, that didn't have recycling programs or good landfills, that's where all the stuff was dumped, right off bridges, right over the banks. It was like time, just saw it firsthand. So I'm thinking, how can I do this operation better? Okay, some of you guys that live in the States, does anybody remember the New York Harbor barge back in 1987 floating around full of garbage? How many people remember that? Okay, and a lot of you guys are into waste. Okay, wherever you go, ask random people in the United States if they remember this New York Harbor barge that basically a municipality or a company put a bunch of garbage on the barge and just, boom, kicked it out, okay? And it floated around. It made national news. Now, I was 13 years old, and I wasn't into garbage or barges, and I remembered this thing. I'm thinking about this operation, how I can do it better and everything. I'm thinking, you know what? A barge. If I had a barge or barges, that would serve a lot of purposes for me. One, it would serve as a floating recycling center. I could load everything on there and sort everything out on the different barge or barges. Two, more importantly maybe, what the barges loaded with garbage would do is make a statement about our rivers without me even having to say a word. What I mean by that is, you roll up with a barge full of garbage in somebody's hometown, somebody's town. They come down there, people come down that riverfront, they look at that barge and they look at you, and they're two things. One, disgusted it just came out of their drinking water in the place that they grew up. And two, 9 times out of 10, they'll want to help you out in some capacity. They love what you're doing. So I'm thinking, gosh, that would be great, If if I had a barge that would do something. Well, it's beginner's luck. I asked a sand company in my hometown, and the week that I asked them was the week they were cutting up 4 barges, okay? They didn't want to sell them because they didn't want a competition. They hadn't got rid of barges in 20 years. Timing is everything, right? I asked them, I got 1 barge. And then I'm looking at it, and the barge is like, you know, it's the size of that whole room, okay? And at that time, we're getting so much stuff. Like we would fill this corner of the room with 6 of us, would fill it up to that brown line, okay? We'd fill this barge in 6 weeks. And I'm thinking, man, the whole idea here is to go an entire season and not have to unload, you know? And so make a bigger pile. I need a couple more barges. I got a couple more barges from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That's a whole other story. I got a couple, and here it is. That was a Near Carter barge. That's a pile. This is my first barge load right here. Now, not everything. I didn't have a lot of money, you know, or anything like that. I didn't know a lot about barges. I was just figuring it out as I went. And you see there's a towboat. Something has to push it around. I didn't even have a place to park the thing, okay? The only good news was my parents live right on the river, so it's a whole other story. I wrecked the dock. It's a bad deal. But anyway, there is a towboat on there. I just used this old little towboat to push it down. When I bought it, I asked the owners of the boat that I bought, I said, do you think that thing would push 3 barges, 360 foot long, 35 foot wide, full of garbage down the Mississippi River? And I'm asking the owners, they're like, oh, hold on a sec, okay? I hear a bunch of laughter in the background, and they come back, it's like, it'll push it downstream pretty good. I don't know about upstream. I'm like, perfect, I'll take it. So anyway, I got that, and then, but you couldn't see once the trash was on there. So this guy right here in this corner, that's the captain driving with 3 walkie-talkies, and that's exactly what we did. We went down the Mississippi River, and we started hosting community cleanups. And I can guarantee almost every person in this room has been to a community cleanup, but we sort of, with the barges that are focused and our workboats, we started to do things in a different way. So what I want to do is just play a quick video real quick. It really captures the spirit of how we do cleanups, and then I'll wrap it up and equate everything I'm doing back to you guys. So here we go.
Is the nickname we've given to a one-of-a-kind sailor who loves the Mississippi River, but who cannot abide a mess. Mark Strassman takes us aboard.
Mississippi moon, won't you keep on shining on? Oh, black water, keep on rolling. Mississippi moon, won't you keep on shining on?
Watching Chad Pregracke cruise the Mississippi River, you can't help but think, this guy's got it made. At 32, he spends his days going with the flow.
It's kind of like a living life force. It sounds kind of strange and hokey, but it's really not. To me, like the river, it represents like freedom, you know, and I mean, it's a way of life.
His way of life. No time clock, no bosses, no commute.
All in all, nice place to go to work.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, if you have to be there at 8, you just wake up at 7:50. Boom. Here you are.
I'm at the office.
I'm here. How are we doing?
It all sounds pretty idyllic. But before you offer to trade places, you should first know exactly what Chad does all day. He picks up garbage. A lot of garbage. Tons of garbage.
But this would be the garbage barge. That would be the recycling barge. We probably have, 3,000 to 4,000 tires collected. And then obviously all the refrigerators, the appliances, you know, water heaters, propane tanks, barrels. This stuff's from like a month's worth of work, just this stuff here. We've already unloaded 2 of these barges completely full though.
Oh.
This year already, so it's just, and that would be heaped, the entire thing heaped full. Anything that you would find like in a landfill or in a house, it winds up here.
It's a huge job. But what's truly amazing is, it isn't really Chad's job. He volunteered, or you could say, the river called him to it. He grew up in tiny Hampton, Illinois, with the Mississippi literally in his backyard. As a teenager, he worked as a clam digger and a commercial shell diver. And wherever he went, he found garbage.
It wasn't like I woke up one morning and said, the river's dirty. It was a lot of time spent out there in different situations. And the more I started to focus on it, I really was, this is amazing how bad it is.
So one day when he was 17, he decided to do something remarkable. Clean up the Mississippi River. One rusted barrel, one old tire at a time.
At the beginning, was it just you against the dirty river?
No, it was me against that pop can or, that barrel or that tire. I just wanted to do something and be able to see the results,
And how long was it just you out there fishing stuff out of the river?
The first year, but I never intended for it just to be myself out there because I knew how much stuff had accumulated over the last 75 years or so, and I knew I could only make so much of an impact.
So in 1997, he formed a non-profit organization, Living Lands and Waters. For the past 10 years, he and a half-dozen crew members have worked full-time, living off donations, cleaning America's waterways.
What are your priority rivers? Mississippi?
Mississippi's definitely our main focus. The Ohio River's a main focus. The Anacostia and Potomac, we work out there as well. The Missouri and the Illinois, those are kind of our main ones, and those are some of the bigger ones in the country.
Traveling from town to town, they recruit volunteers along the way.
Found a lot of interesting goodies.
See, I found a tire and a soccer ball and a propane tank thing.
My thought for the day is that if nothing else, I will never use another piece of styrofoam in my life because I think I picked up about 8 pounds of just little tiny pieces of styrofoam.
With their help, over the last decade, Chad estimates he's pulled nearly 4 million pounds of garbage from America's rivers.
Let's do it. Let's load up and go on over there.
A recent Saturday morning found Chad in Burlington, Iowa, where 150 residents showed up to help. Curiously, all of them with the same first name.
Hey, how you doing, dude? Good to see you. How you doing? Thanks, dude. Hey, man. Hey, Chad. How you doing, dude? Dude, I know. Dude, representing, dude.
Jeff Bergman's with Iowa's Department of Conservation. He's worked with Chad on his stops here for the last 9 years.
Would this have happened without him?
No, not to this magnitude. You'll see a little cleanup. You'll see a little here, a little there. No, it wouldn't happen without Chad's goodwill. No, he's a cheerleader. He makes things happen.
It's kind of heavy, isn't it?
It's heavy lifting, but Chad keeps things light, turning every cleanup into a round of garbage barge poker. Best haul wins.
Like if we go out and you get 3 refrigerators in a day, like in a boatload, I should say, it tops any other boatload. But if you get 2 bowling balls, that trumps the 3 refrigerators. That's the inside. If you've never seen the inside of a bowling ball, the ice breaks them, I believe, because we find a lot of broken ones. We have bones here.
Okay, what's the story with this?
I don't know. It looks pretty, I really don't know. We haven't probably checked those out.
The barge the crew lives on is decorated with river serendipity. It's a floating gallery of found art.
Babies. What's all to do with that?
I don't know. Somebody on the crew started putting them up there, but honestly, we found literally thousands of dolls. That's just like within a couple weeks, somebody put that up there.
Are you still pulling the same sorts of stuff out of the Mississippi today that you were 5 or 10 years ago?
Some of the same sort of stuff, yes, but a lot less of it. A lot of towns we don't even go back to that we've been in the past because it's clean.
Between cleanups, Chad and the crew hold education seminars. So far, 1,500 teachers have become Chad's students.
But I think we really are having an impact through you guys.
And he's written a book about his adventures, which he hopes will inspire others as he was inspired.
I once read in a book that the earth is not destroyed as a whole. It's not just, boom, it's destroyed. It's piece by piece. And I think that's the same way that it needs to be fixed. It could be a tire by tire pulling out of the river or a barrel or whatever it is, little by little. It's the little things that really do add up. And if a lot of people come together and do those little things, it adds up to big things.
So that gives you a better idea of a community cleanup, and I'm really happy to announce that as of last November, I did my 1,000th community cleanup, and since I started, I've worked on 23 rivers in 20 states, And I've been so fortunate to have worked, by the end of this year, I'll have worked side by side with 100,000 volunteers, and we'll have removed, within a few months of next year, we'll have removed about 10 million pounds of garbage since I started. And I know that in the scheme of things, thank you. But I know 10 million pounds, like, is really big to me, because you had to hand shovel everything out, you know, and then load it in a boat, load it on a barge to sort it out, and then, you know, I mean, it's a lot very labor intensive, but in the scheme of things that you're talking about, it's not that big, but it sure seemed like a lot of work. But so what you're looking at there is one of the only river cleanup operations like in the world. I'm very proud of it. It took a lot of trials and errors of what works, what doesn't. It's an efficient river cleanup operation. On the other video, you saw a little 400 horsepower boat. This one we upgraded to a 1,000 horsepower boat, which was great, but it was kind of, truthfully, a little bit embarrassing. Because if you were sitting on the bank, you know, we're coming up full of garbage. People are looking at it like, hey, there's river cleanup. They love clean water. But then there was old engines in it, so you had black smoke pouring out of it. They're like, I don't think they like clean air all that much, so I just don't think they're down with that. I'm not really sure. No, but John Deere's my hometown. Got a lot of sponsorship from them and Caterpillar, but we replaced all the engines, upgraded. I built that green new barge. It's all out of recycled materials. It's actually, I know it sounds crazy, but the bulk of it is built off an old strip club that was on the banks of the Mississippi River, got flooded. That guy in the blue laughed. He loves strip clubs. No, but joking. But maybe not. You might. I don't know. No, it is. The superstructure's all built out of it. The building got flooded in 1993, sat vacant, worked a deal out with the mayor, blah, blah, blah. Everything is pretty much recycled on there except for the roof. And here's the deal. I named it. I couldn't think of a good name for the new barge, okay? And then I got to thinking, all right, what's it taken to get this river clean, and what's it going to take to continue to get it clean? And that's teamwork. So that's what I named it, teamwork, because that's really what it is. That's really what this conference is all about. Look, you asked for them to join your mission, right? What you need? You need the teamwork to get the job done. So teamwork's really what it's all about. Speaking of team, Monique's in the back right there. She just left Living Lands and Waters. I've lived with her for like 2 years. She's amazing. She needs a job right now. She just moved back to the East Coast. So if you want to open an East Coast connection, she's the one. She kicks ass. Throwing it out there for her. Boom, I owe her. She's amazing. So, any applicant right over there. There she is. Raise your hand. Boom. Threw it in there for you, Monique. You didn't know I was going to do that, but I did that for her. But here's the deal. I got a great crew of people. I've worked with 150 different crew members along the way. There's 13 of us that live on that. We go town to town, city to city, and we try to do as much as we can, setting up community cleanups, making the change. Now, operation-wise, that's the inside. We do a lot of education, 2 full-time teachers on staff, have all these high school students out 4 to 5 days a week. And then here's the new one, okay? We're working on the Ohio River. A lot of attention on the oceans, a lot of attention on different rivers, but the Ohio River and all the rivers I've been to is the worst one in the country, in my opinion. There's 10 to 15,000 55-gallon barrels in a 981-mile stretch in that river alone, in it, right? That's just the barrels. So what I did is I built that other barge last year, added another towboat, and the excavator right there so we can go and just, what? Boom. Game changer. And game on. It's really what I named that new barge, because that's really what it is. And our goal is 1 million pounds a year for many years to come. Now here's the deal. Here's the thing. We're all working towards one thing, and that's change. And whatever way you're working at it, I don't know. And I just want to say that I really appreciate what you guys do, right? I love what I do. There's so many things great. I mean, I got to work with you guys at spring break and get to work with great people, get to make some change. And in this industry that you guys are in, because really it is an industry, if you think about it, you guys have the ability to make change. And here's the deal. Change, we would love it to be fast. And boom, the change is made. This is taken care of. That's great. But the reality is our change is slow. Okay? Change is just like that barge right there. That's what I equate it to, the barge. And here's what happens. That change is slow, okay? And in that barge, turn it on, it's very slow because it's so heavy. It's slow to get going, but then it builds momentum, and then it's hard to stop. And we're all working towards change here. And you go back to all these different countries, and I know a lot of you are dealing with really big problems with no easy answers. I totally get it, kind of. I don't live there, so I shouldn't say I get it, because I really don't have a good comprehension for all the difficulties that a lot of you go through. But I will tell you, if nothing else, what I will tell you, the thing I've learned is change does happen, and it isn't overnight, but it does happen. So if things are tough, just keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing. And think big, you know? I forgot my ending, so I got to read this piece of paper in my pocket, okay? Just being real with you. No, because I think it's nope, I already said my ending. So, here's the deal. I don't have a good ending. No, here's the deal. Just like a lot of you in the audience, I don't have a great ending, right? Because the deal is, I've been doing this 20 years, and I still wake up every day, and I know that there's so much more to do, and truthfully, I feel like I'm just getting started. I wish you all the best of success in what you do. You are dealing with huge problems with no easy answers, but you know what? Change does happen, and it starts with all of you, and I wish you'll go back to wherever you're from and just keep making the change. And I think this conference is great, bringing everybody together, because we are really on one big team here. And so I appreciate what you do, and I really thank you for the opportunity to be up here. Sorry my ending kind of sucked, but whatever. It is what it is. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
To wrap up the ISWA Marine Litter Showcase, welcome to the stage, please, Jenna Jambak.
Wow. That's going to be a tough act to follow, but Chad was really inspiring, and thank you for what you do. So I've been in solid waste over 20 years. I was a student member of SWANA. If you would have told me then that I would be on this stage at WASTECON doing this kind of talk, I would have not believed you for sure. So it's really amazing to be here, and I ran into my graduate school mentor. So I didn't know he was going to be here, and I'm coming up the escalator, and this is something that happens at WASTECON. You run into folks that you haven't seen in a while, and he just said, Jenna, and so I'm like, Tim. So I got to see him and really kind of get back to my roots and how long I've been in waste management, but let me start my PowerPoint so it doesn't, same thing that happened to Chad. It's an intimidating stage. Okay. So during this time period, I've been able to, I've had the honor to be able to travel the world and meet people working within the waste management industry. I think it is one that is unrecognized in many, many cases and often goes unthanked. And for me, I want to say to everybody here, and I know you were thanked a lot by Chad, but thank you. And for me, when I travel the world and say to people, I see you, it makes a big difference. So, apparently I went backwards. So what I'm talking to you today about is marine litter, and maybe I'm going to back up a little bit because they said they wanted to hear if you're a solid waste manager, if you work in the industry right now, and I was actually asked to do this at the SWANA chapter in Georgia, where I live, where I'm from, and I'm an environmental engineer. I guess I forgot to introduce that as well. So they asked me to come and talk because they said, you know, at our facilities, in our county, in our municipality, community, we're getting questions about marine litter. This is a very high profile issue, and actually when I heard about it in 2001, when I started my PhD, I immediately connected it to what we were doing on land, and I wanted to study it. It was not something that any engineer that I was aware of was doing. So I did go to my advisor, who was very open, and he said, well, why don't you at least go to talk to someone in marine sciences or some ocean-related discipline as well. So I did. And I had this conversation. I said, I really want to study this issue. I think it's a problem that we need to start addressing from on land. And I was in the state of Florida, big coastline, and the answer was, nobody cares about that. And I was like, what? How can we not care about our trash ending up in the ocean? And he said, well, maybe if you were in Alaska or Hawaii, where really this problem is very evident, then that might work. But really, it's not something that anyone cares about here. So I left, and I knew that I probably couldn't do this work for my PhD, but I wrote a paper anyway. I did a survey. So I've really been working in this, caring about this issue for over 15 years now. And so just like Chad talked about that barge, the change has happened very slowly, but I have to say, within the last 3 years, this has just exploded in terms of people caring about it is very evident, and then beyond that, people trying to address it globally. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a bit more information that might be helpful as you get questions from your community or as you try to make a difference on this issue globally. So you heard, and Costas gave a great overview, I think, and I'm really happy to see this ISWA task force formed. It's going to be a great way for people to get involved from our industry. So you also heard then that plastic doesn't biodegrade, and many of us know that. But it does fragment over time. And so that floats ends up in these gyres within the ocean. There's 5 most known gyres, but that also now is ending up in the Arctic and other locations. So even where there isn't people, we're seeing this microplastic form. And then there's islands, there's deposition sites. The reason the guy told me people care in Hawaii because it's a deposition site. Midway Island is where the ocean spits back out the plastic that has ended up there. Henderson Island, Easter Island. Those islands that interrupt those ocean currents. And then somebody asked, there was great questions after Costas' talk about rivers. Well, we have documented the input of rivers. This wasn't a paper by me, but it's in the science, it's in the literature. So if you're interested in some of the current science, please feel free to ask me more about that. And then, what happens when plastic ends up in our environment? Why should we care? And, these are pictures that when I first got involved with this issue, I'm like, oh, now we're going to see the animals interacting with the plastic. But it's important to see these images because these are the results of the plastic being there. And even now we know that microbes that colonize plastic make it smell like food to seabirds. We've just found out more and more with the science in terms of the interaction of wildlife with it. The 2 most common things that people often know about or ask about are going to be ingestion and entanglement. But we also know that persistent organic pollutants like pesticides and DDT and flame retardants sorb to plastic. We also now know about microbeads in our cosmetic products. They are banned from production in the U.S. as of this year, and then are going to be banned for sale by next year. A bipartisan bill, pretty unheard of, going all the way through Congress. And now we also know that plastics can transport invasive species and actually have economic impact as well. So there's research that shows that people will go to a different beach or a different place that doesn't have litter, and they will spend money to do that. And I think we now know that the microplastic, which includes the microbeads and then also the microfibers that you heard that come off of synthetic clothing when you wash them, just like in your dryer, you have lint in your lint trap. This happens in your washer. Those fibers get into our water systems and are getting into our waterways, and we're finding them in seafood, like filter feeder seafood, and in table salt. And they're actually very, very hard to quantify and identify from a scientific standpoint. And we don't know at the bottom of our food chain these interactions with the phytoplankton and the rest of our food web. So why, sort of how has this come to be if we back up again and look at the total quantity of plastics that have been produced and sort of the rapid rise of the use of plastic, a very, very useful material. We wouldn't have our mobile devices. We wouldn't have, many of the conveniences that we have today. So incredibly useful, absolutely necessary in many cases, but also material that is cheap and easy to utilize for so many applications that it sort of literally almost exploded onto the marketplace and has increased over time so rapidly. So we have a total of 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic that has been produced since we started recording production statistics in 1950. And of that, already 6.3 billion has become waste. So that has come to us as waste managers to figure out how to manage. We've only been able to recycle 9% of that, with pretty much 80% of it either ending up in our landfills or in our environment. Both of these numbers, production and waste generation, are expected to rise as population grows and use of plastic continues to increase. What we did in 2015 as a part of a large international working group that I was a part of, we backed up again and asked the question, how much plastic is actually going into the ocean? Because at this point, many of the scientists, which is why they were asking why I was involved as an environmental engineer, they were marine biologists and ecologists and folks going out and finding plastic in our environment. But we wanted to back up and say, well, how much is actually going in? And then once we know that, can we help figure out how to prevent that? So we looked at 192 countries in the world with a coastline and a 50-kilometer buffer of that coastline for the generation of municipal waste. As we had this discussion about how much was going in, we said, you know what, there's probably a large portion from municipal waste, but we wanted to quantify that. So in that buffer, we looked at the quantity of plastic waste generation, the quantity that's mismanaged, and then from there, an estimate of what was going into the ocean. And our mid-estimate, of course, this is a range. This is the first time this has been done, so it was 5 to 13 million metric tons, the mid-estimate being 8 million metric tons. You know, as solid waste people, we work with these large numbers and these large quantities, but it is hard to envision that. So converted to a volume, just a bulk density of plastic, you can imagine all of us standing hand to hand on all the coastline covering the entire world. Each one of us would have in front of us 5 grocery-sized bags filled with plastic. So, since we used country-level data for this, we had data for every country. And so this was a part of the research that I didn't realize was going to get as much attention as it did, because we were trying to look at influencing factors. It was not about, well, first of all, it was for data transparency. Secondly, it was to look for these influencing factors and how could we prioritize our actions. So what we found was that we saw the highest leakage from really rapidly economically developing middle-income countries that had not kept up with waste management infrastructure. The only high-income country in the top 20 was the U.S., and with a large coastline and a fairly high population, but honestly our per-person waste generation rate is what bumped us up, because the only leakage that we counted for the U.S. was litter. So now we sort of have defined this problem. We know it's global. Once plastic enters our waterways, or at least our ocean environment, it is the ultimate transporter and can end up anywhere. What can we maybe do to mitigate this issue? What can we do to solve this? And probably because I did this research, I've been sort of tapped to help think about that and strategize. And so part of my goal was, or part of what I was asked to do, was to testify to Congress, so to the Senate Public Works and Environment Committee. Again, this issue has been entirely bipartisan. and very supportive in terms of trying to figure out how to solve this, not only in the US, but globally. So anyway, I developed this framework for that. And if you can imagine on the left side of the screen, that being the ocean, if we want to have zero input of plastic, then you can think about all these intervention strategies all the way up. Sorry, it would be your right side of the screen. On the left side, that's going to be your upstream interventions or more upstream interventions, and on the right side, a little bit more downstream. All of these are needed, and they can be integrated across the entire value chain. So let's go into a bit more detail, but before we do, I want to say one part about solid waste that I really probably made me fall in love with studying it. Besides the fact I fell in love with my husband at the landfill, working at the landfill. New River, if anyone here is from Florida, but we were doing research out there. But it's people. So, I mean, people have said, you know, oh, you're a trash person. I'm like, well, yeah, actually, I'm a people person, because you think about behind our systems, not only are we making choices every single day about what we buy, what we consume, and then what we do with it, some people don't even consider something trash that somebody else does. And then once we do consider something trash or waste, what we do with it, do we decide to recycle or just discard it or donate it? That fascinates me. And then the entire people behind the whole management of our materials, that fascinates me as well. These kids were just in an ad hoc recycling facility in between Delhi and Agra. And we pulled off, and I don't think they had ever seen anybody like us from America before, and they were just amazed and interested in meeting us. But people are behind the numbers that I already gave you lots of numbers. So let's talk about intervention strategies. So in terms of way upstream, now that we know that plastic is projected to increase, unless there is some voluntary industry or policies, and we can talk about some of those at the end, if you want to have individual power and individual choice, you can both advocate for the change that you want to see and then make those choices. These are really mundane. People have seen them before. What I say is start with one. A small choice that you can make and then follow forever and ever. This is almost like a security blanket to me, my water bottle. I take it everywhere. It's become a habit. It took a long time to sort of get that way. But that's one change. And if you think about then, I guess the average, I think, US is about 4 water bottles a day. If you think about how many years and days that I haven't done that, that's made a difference. Reusable bags, either reusable straws or saying no to straws. Again, these sound really boring, but taken collectively, they do make a difference. And now we have the data to show that. So thinking about how we shift maybe our entire system, and unfortunately I had a meeting during the New Plastics Economy session, but really they are thinking about this from a systems change perspective, and this is really an exciting, innovative, and even entrepreneurial stage that I think is sort of ripe for change. And so even thinking about value proposition changes, when I see a car company, an airline company sponsoring bike shares, I know the world is changing. So sharing and collaborative economy, how can we meet people's needs and increase livelihood without necessarily increasing waste generation? Right now, per person waste generation is coupled with economic growth. But I think through some of the innovation and technology even that we hold in our hand, we can maybe decouple some of that so you can have the economic growth without necessarily the same kind of increase in waste generation. Consider end of life at the design stage. Huge dream of mine. I mean, in the solid waste world, we just have to react to whatever comes our way. Whatever product they make, for whatever reason, guess what? It ends up in our waste stream. All of a sudden, CDs and DVDs come out. All of a sudden, all the cases. I remember digging into landfills and seeing huge piles of CD cases. That was a stage, and now they're gone. I mean, our waste stream is so reflective of what happening in our society. And wouldn't it be great if we could have conversations with those product designers and material developers right now to say, here's what we actually could do so that we can manage these materials and they have a higher value at end of life. This diagram is the result of, and there was questions about this, extended producer responsibility. All of a sudden, when a industry or a corporation became responsible for managing their waste, they actually realized that if they were consistent with their product design, they could recycle their beverage bottles bottle to bottle as long as they followed these guidelines, and then so they did. Which is very different than considering, well, I need to have a bottle look a certain way for marketing, which all these specifications still need to be taken into account. But if you can also include end of life at the design stage, I think we could see a big shift. So because of that, I have teamed with a colleague of mine in polymer science, and we have an institute at the university called the New Materials Institute. So not only is he trying to develop new materials and product designs, I'm testing them and evaluating them from the waste management side. So we actually have these two ends talking together, and we're working with industry, companies, and actually any partner who would be interested in working together as well, even within our local community and the solid waste folks there and at the university. So moving a bit more downstream, and sort of what we oftentimes focus on here is, I've come up with these 3 C's because although there's lots of similarities around the world, we also still have differences. So in general, the collect, capture, and contain the waste. This will keep it out of the ocean. And I'm going to go through a few slides from some of my travels, but moving away from the open dumping scenario, which actually this landfill doesn't look that different, or this dump site, than where I brought my waste as a kid, which we would just put our stuff in my neighbor's truck, borrow that, and drive up and throw it in, and there was black bears. Transitioning to sanitary, semi-sanitary landfill conditions. Many of these places around the world where we're talking about these rapidly developing economies have a huge informal waste management sector. How do you bridge that divide, if there is, or create an inclusive environment for probably the millions of people who are working in this industry around the world? How can you maybe utilize the network that has organically grown and what these people are already doing to properly manage the waste? So many people are working behind the scenes on this effort, and can we increase their working conditions? Can we teach them about waste separation, keeping organics out of the waste stream so that we have a much higher valued recycled product, and creating systems where folks are able to have these clean recyclables that are much more valued, and working with some public, private, and governmental, I would say, projects, because I think all of those folks have a role to play. So this is an interesting partner that we have at the New Materials Institute. We're working with Dell, who's looking at valuing plastic that is mismanaged in this coastal environment so that it doesn't make it to the ocean. And this then automatically gives this material a value, so it catalyzes the development of infrastructure, because if something has a value, people are going to work at collecting it, and then there can be resources to develop this collection and processing infrastructure. And so downstream, in terms of last chance capture, which is what we call this, and being able to prevent it from the waste from getting to the ocean, although I think cleanups are very important, because we're probably always going to have leakage, unfortunately, although I dream of not. What I think the power of some of this is being able to collect data. So this is Mr. Trash Wheel. It is less than a mile down the road if you haven't seen him, or Professor Trash Wheel, which is a woman. Please go see them. I actually haven't seen it in person, but I'm headed there before I have to get on my flight today. And then our hands. So all of the amazing work that Chad has done. I think he's got amazing metrics and probably even has more data than he was able to share. But when I was thinking about collecting data, This was now, it's been 7 years or 6.5 years since Marine Debris Tracker was out. A colleague in computer systems and I developed a mobile app. So Marine Debris Tracker, if you are cleaning up or have a group of folks who are cleaning up, you can use this app and tell us everything you've picked up. So you have this amazing map and data set to be able to go to those people, maybe funders or decision makers or people who can change policy and say, look what I've found. If you can't get them out there, a map can show a lot of data and be a very powerful tool. This is a completely open data platform. You have complete access to your data. You have access to the entire global data set. There's been 1 million items collected and logged with the app. You can find us on social media. The biggest thing in these communities is to collect data to inform solutions. And in terms of cleanups and the power that they can have, besides the awareness, you heard the woman in the video say, I'm not ever going to use something as styrofoam again because I just picked up how many of them. That was another goal of this. If you've picked up 3,500 some straws, you may think twice when you're offered a straw next time. And I think finally understanding that there is a global movement. There was some discussion over, or a question asked about a convention. That is certainly in the discussion points. It's something that takes a long time, but there's been declarations through the G7 that I participated in, the G20. The World Bank is looking at this issue. You've got all of the different UN components, and I think all of these kind of come together. There's 2 design competitions, if you know any students, one through the United Nations and Think Beyond Plastic, and one through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So please, there's lots of ways to participate. And there's a bill in Congress, again, bipartisan, looking at strengthening our global, the U.S. global input through the State Department. And a quick resource that's available is Marine Litter Network. This is a project that we worked on with the UN and provides over 200 different projects that have happened around the world, information and locations on them, and some best management practices and best available technologies and current events as well. And I'm running out of time here. I see that. So just a bit of other work that we've done. My group and I participated in this African Marine Waste Network conference. Linda Godfrey is here. I don't know if she's still, there she is. So this was amazing to get all of these countries together on an entire continent to think about this. So I think these regional initiatives, and again, sort of looking at data in ways that we can think about prioritizing how we can address these issues. And then we're also working in the ASEAN region as well. So please, my ending is just, this is dedicated to all the people who are sort of seen and unseen, I think, working in the waste management industry and addressing this issue around the world. So thank you.
Well, just a few minutes before the session officially ends, it's my great pleasure to introduce you a speaker that is suddenly involved. I'm sorry for that. He was supposed that he will be here to address the opening ceremony, but it was not possible. Then we discussed to address the closing ceremony again. It was not possible. And since ISWA is a very close partner and supports a lot the world's cleanup movement, and we would like to invite you all at next year's Cleanup Day on September 15, 2018. I would like to ask my good friend Paul Martenson to give you some more data and some more inspiration for this great event. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm ambassador for the World Cleanup Day, which is 15 September 2018. And we've been working quite hard now for a couple of years for it, and we hope we're going to have a great success with it. It's run by the Let's Do It Foundation, which is started in Estonia 8 years ago, and they have put out about 20 million people cleaning up cities and countries during the last years. So the World Cleanup Day, 15 September 2018, is something that you should try to remember and try to activate and be on. The symbol we're working with is this one, and it will be in media now a lot because we are speeding up now in for the last year. So what's it all about? It's about that we're going to have more than 150 countries coming out to cleaning up, and in a global cleanup. And the intention is, of course, that we're going to have a lot of trash from all over the world. And the idea is 350, 380 million people, which is 5% of the world population. And some countries already done it. Some small countries like Kosovo, Albany, and Estonia, Lithuania and stuff, they raised about 12, 15% of the population. So the question is, if you are on board, then you can go to the World Cleanup Day and you can apply as a leader, and you can also get all the information about the whole event. So we are preparing right now, recruiting volunteers, and also have educational programs all over the world. That's why I'm right now for the moment on a world tour, which will end in just before Christmas. So I'm going to go all over except Australia. How do we do it? It's 4 main steps for the success. It's about see the waste, because I live for the moment in the Philippines, and people, they walk in trash. That's what we call the trash blindness. They don't see it anymore. They don't see that it's trash. So that is the first thing. You have to see the waste. And we need to cure this kind of trash blindness. Number 2 is we're going to map all the trash all over the world. So we have an app, like everybody else, of course. It's called World Cleanup app, and it is connected with a lot of other of these trash out apps in the world. So we're going to try to merge a lot of data into one big database. The third step is you're going to bag it. Bag it when we have done the cleanup, and collect it, and also try to recycle as much as possible. That's how we from the Zero Waste movement came into the Let's Do It, because they were just doing cleanups and they left the waste. So we also introduced the recycling programs and are quite successful with that now. And the fourth step is, of course, we're going to move it. So we need all the haulers, we need all the municipalities that got the logistics to help us to move the trash into the place where it belongs, depending on what country you are from. So it will start 10 o'clock in New Zealand, and there will be like a worldwide wave all over the world, and it will end up in Hawaii. And we hope this will be the world's biggest positive civic collaboration, and it's a peaceful thing we're going to do, and we hope everybody can get on board. To all people that believe in these things with apps, I would just say that you cannot just download an app. You have to do the work. You have to do the job. You have to use your brain. You have to use your hands. That's what it's all about. And that's why it's so awesome to have brains, so we can use it. We have good examples, and you can read of these on the ldiw.org, where you can read about the examples, and you can also get all the information about the Let's Do It organization. So to tell you right now is to get on board now and look into the websites we have and spread it into your organizations, NGOs, companies, whatever you are. And let's see if we can have everybody on board the 15th September 2018. We're going to have a few big concerts also in the world ending the 15th. And we're going to, of course, have a follow-up for the next couple of months in the year also. And then we don't really know what's going to happen with the whole organization. But right now, we are focused on the 15th September. And look into the websites and see if you are the ones who want to be on board. Thank you very much.